Alrighty. So, last night they released some new stuff. The Breath series, the Sword of the North Wind. So I figured I'd go over these procs and whether or not it is worth it to spawn. So first, it is 75 to get the guaranteed item, but you don't get to choose. And then it's going to be roughly 750 gems to get each of these. Now they do have a special Unison ability, and the relic is actually kind of interesting. Everything else is like, in my opinion, but let's look at the proc itself. It's kind of an interesting proc. Increases your cost by 20 and boosts uni as well. Increases physical and magical ability success value by L, which is 30. And then procs on 7XL plus for ability power and procs up to XL chance. That is really, really good. I mean, the highest that we've seen, I think, before for ability success has been 20 at M. And I think the highest cost gain before this was 15. To have a weapon that has both cost gain and uni gain is already kind of rare. I think the last time that we saw something like this, they released a newer proc, and they released it with 5 cost, 5 uni. In my opinion, anything that gives both cost and uni is already a 6 out of 10 for procs. The main reason is because now that unis have always been king, but you really need a lot of cost procs in order to use these super expensive abilities that are super powerful. For example, one of the most common abilities that's still used a lot is Lance Flash. It costs 25. So if you use this just 4 times, you'd be completely out of cost. So you need cost gain, but you also need uni gain. Now that you can use uni, and since you can use uni as part of your abilities, these are very, very valuable just for the fact that they give you lots of cost and lots of uni. But it doesn't end there. They also boost by the success value rate by 30, which is incredibly good because there are many abilities, let's go back to Lance Flash, like Lance Flash, that do not have a 100% hit rate. So for this one, it hits 5 times, but you only have a 70% chance to actually hit those. They could land as misses. So before, you'd have to throw unis or you would need to double proc a 20% boost, the M proc, the medium one, in order to get 100% accuracy. Now you can single proc and you can get that. And that is really important. It is worth noting that there are some abilities that are still incredibly hard to land. So for example, Forbidden Temptation, you really have to double proc and like something that boosts success value rate. And even then, you're not guaranteed to get to 100. With a 50% success value rate, it's really hard to get this ability to do a lot of damage. But now it has been made easier. Along with the 7XL Plus, the 7XL Plus is good. It is the highest. We haven't seen 8XL, but I do not like that it's just on an XL proc rate. We have seen many good XXL proc rates before, and it is a little bit disappointing. Not completely disappointing. We're also missing some things, right? We're missing crit. We're missing just pure percent damage up. There are some procs that have, like the best damaging procs in the past, have given both success value rate plus a really high ability power boost, plus, cost or uni depending on the proc itself. And then they will also give a 15% damage boost, which is massive over the course of a very difficult quest, or in the case of attacking the crystal, could be massive for the crystal damage. That don't discount that 15%. That doesn't mean that this proc is bad by any means, but it's not necessarily the top end for damage. This is more of a utility proc in my opinion, and the fact that it stacks up to 3 is pretty easy because you just need wind. You don't necessarily need like a sword or a wind sword, so it is kind of nice that it's easier to stack. These also come with a special type of uni ability. I'll go over each of those, but let's do the armors first. This is unfortunately very bad. Nullifies physical damage and nullifies magical damage. Recovers 10 cost. These are awful. They're super easy to ignore, and they proc on an L+. So horrible for PvP, probably decent for PvE, but I wouldn't prioritize them. They're just, in my opinion, I still would recommend damage reduction for PvE. However, these are kind of in a niche situation. If you have a few, they're not bad for PvE. They're just awful for PvP. In most cases, I can think of a few cases where if you apply something like erosion on the enemies, or if you threw a monster that applied erosion and they couldn't remove it, then maybe it would be good. But like, it's just significantly worse in many aspects to a lot of really easy to obtain defense procs. So I just don't like it. Let's go over each of the abilities, and then I'll give you my final opinion. So the ability on the sword gives it's 15 uni. Has a 15-second cooldown, which is massive, by the way. That's awful. Absolutely awful. Doesn't double proc, so we're not using it in something like PvE, where this would be a PvP or guild battle exclusive. Prevents Unison gauge activation and deals damage. This was a very popular type of damaging proc, like ability on an ability. Like 2 years ago, something like that. It first like really made a big prevalence. Was used all the time in guild battles, but it just is not super used anymore. The main reason why this isn't that great is because, yes, you're not feeding the enemy uni, but it doesn't prevent them from proccing something that gives them uni. So, for example, see if I can find it. This one, when it procs, it gives me uni. So when I get attacked, I still have a chance of gaining uni, even if the ability itself doesn't gain uni. So it's kind of a little bit misleading. If you think, oh, well, I'm not going to feed. Well, you could still feed in something like guild battle. And the other reason why it's not good is because you're not using this on a racer. The previous ones were cost-based. This one's uni-based. So this is really meant to snipe the enemy, which means that you need Mandate or you need Ravaging procs, something to pierce, right? And in Guild Battle right now, it's really hard to snipe properly with Clamorous Howl being so prevalent. Clamorous Howl prevents you from piercing, and the only way to really kill somebody is to pierce their damage reduction and damage reflection right now. So overall, this is just awful. Honestly, this is one of the worst abilities I've seen on a weapon, especially a new weapon, in a long time. Something super unique. This type of proc here is like a 2 or a 3 out of 10, in my opinion. Maybe even lower. I'd be convinced if you gave me like, if you really pushed me, I could probably just give it like a 1 out of 10. Honestly, it's just bad. Like, it's just bad. This one is a little bit better. This one does not nullify Unison gauge. However, it does penetrate nullification and vulnerability, which is It's much better. That way you only need to proc ravaging in order to pierce everything. However, you do need to keep in mind that this proc in particular is coming on a lance, and lancers already have access to plenty of abilities that pierce, and using uni is not a great strategy. Usually, lancers in guild battle do not struggle with cost. Of course, it depends on what type of abilities you're using, but in my experience, it's probably completely unnecessary. I like this one a little bit more, though. This one's like a 6 out of 10. Kind of depends on the situation and what you're running in guild battle, but I wouldn't run it in a Coliseum match, that's for sure. This one is another prevent uni, so we're gonna skip it. It's awful. This one is another prevent uni, so we're gonna skip it. It's awful. This one is super interesting. So we changed the cooldown time, only 5 seconds, which is, it doesn't sound like it makes a big difference, but in the heat of battle, it makes a massive difference. All allies heals, all allies recovers 30% CP. Now, if you don't know, all healing is a dual scaling ability. So all healing heals based off of your defense, or sorry, your magic defense and your magic attack. So people who scale things like relics and books and defense gear, you're already double scaled for it, so it's good. This should heal you basically fully. And 30% CP, there's not a lot of abilities that heal CP, and there are even fewer weapon abilities that heal CP. This is a super specific type of weapon ability, but I actually like it. And the reason why is because in something like Guild Battle, you can use this for frontline clerics who are not gaining uni, but are cleansing the team from things like uni downs, or uni gain reductions, are cleansing from things like the enemies have thrown a uni and you're clearing insanity or rejection or something else like that. There's a lot of instances, even our guild, we run clerics in the front line, and we have for a long time. It's not that they're mandatory, it's that they make racing and other strategies much safer because they're a dedicated person to cleansing the frontline people. And really, when every second matters, it does make a difference. So having a cleric who's gaining uni, but not using the uni actively, it's kind of an interesting deal. Most of the time, our cleric doesn't even uni even after, a few of us have unied. And the reason why is because they simply don't have uni, but they do have enough uni to use something like this. A lot of cleric abilities are expensive, and it wouldn't be uncommon for a cleric to have 15 uni. The 5-second cooldown, also very, very nice. I like both of these things. And overall, I would rank this as, like, if you're running a cleric just in general, this is a really good ability. Having a guaranteed 30% CP heal is massive. If you don't know, CP is way, way bigger than HP. So like your normal HP pool is like 2 million, something like that, between 2 and 4 million. And the average CP pool is between like 5 to 8 million. So it's about double your normal HP pool. Kind of depends on what your HP is and what class you're playing, and there's a bunch of other things that factor into both of those. But your CP is generally way higher, and there's not a lot of abilities that heal CP. So I really like this ability for clerics. I think if I was running a cleric, I would rank this as probably 8 out of 10 to 10 out of 10. It really depends on your strategy. In some strategies, it would be much better. In other strategies, it would be much worse. It really depends on the strategy that you're running. This one is a penetration ability, and I like this one a lot more. This one is probably my favorite out of all of the penetration abilities, and the main reason for that is it does physical and magical damage. It's just easier to kill somebody when you're spreading damage, because a lot of old nullification procs only apply to one of the two. So it only applies to damage reduction, or it only applies to physical or magical. Doesn't apply to both. So even though a lot of those old abilities that I'm talking about, you can ignore them with something like this. If they have them equipped, there's still a chance that they proc. So let's just take an example, right? See if it's probably faster if I do this. Okay, so this procs only when you get hit with physical, right? Because it nullifies only physical damage, but it also reduces ability power. So don't discount the ability power, even if this ability ignores the nullification aspect. If they have specifically built to survive certain classes, there's a chance that they will run something in guild battles, like as a defensive proc, they may run something like this, and they will have an ability specifically for nullification. And in this instance, you're also reducing ability power. Now, this doesn't reduce magical ability power, and that's what I'm talking about. It's easier to snipe somebody out when you have two different types of damage. And it has always been that way. It's always way easier to kill somebody with two different types of damage as opposed to one. Because if somebody builds super specifically against either magic or physical, it's much easier to survive. So overall, I like this one a lot better. I would still only give it like a 7 out of 10, but in my opinion, it's much better than the other ones. So overall, I think that these procs are pretty good. The weapon ability, you're not getting it for the weapon ability except for the relic, in my opinion. That's the only one worth getting. These for free-to-play players and for newer players, I really, really like them. Honestly, for new players and free-to-play players, meeting certain conditions in your weapons is kind of difficult. So you won't have as much flexibility in your weapons and stuff like that. Only needing to get 3 of these isn't too difficult. And the fact that they're super, super good in both PvP and PvE and guild battles, like they've got a really nice flexibility to them with so much cost, so much uni, and ability power boost for most classes, in my opinion. And for free-to-play players and for newer players, these are really good. They're like 9 out of 10 procs. They don't fit everything, but they're really flexible. And that's what matters when it comes to these. Now, the really big downside is that if you're a free-to-play player or a new player, you have a chance of getting the defensive procs, and those, in my opinion, are pretty bad. However, if you have no other procs, they are, acceptable. They're, like we talked about earlier, they're much better in PvP than they are PvE in questing than they are in actual PvP or guild battles. Now, if you're a whale or if you're somebody who's trying to get it for a specific element, like you're building a win set in particular, we are missing some things. We are missing the damage boost that I was talking about earlier. We are missing, like guaranteed crits, and we are missing better proc rates, XXL. This isn't a end-all be-all proc. However, picking up a few of these actually would be really beneficial. There are some really, really powerful procs that give no cost. And if you run nothing but super powerful procs, so for example, I believe the mandate procs are like that, where they don't give anything. Let's check. Yeah. So this one's a great proc, right? This one is 7XL on ability power, same thing, with an XL proc rate. This one gives M plus to success value, which is 25%, and then increases damage by 20%. It's like a percentage of damage increase. 20% is massive, right? But what are we missing? Do you notice? No cost, no uni. If you run nothing but mandate procs, yes, you're going to be doing more damage, but yes, you are also going to be completely out of cost and uni really, really fast in a lot of cases. So running something like this, even a few of them for high-level players, may be worth it for something like a wind set, specifically because they give so much cost. You would only need to proc, if you're triple procking, you only need to proc one of these in order to really recoup a lot of mana. So I do like these. I would still rank them as a 9 out of 10, even for longer term players. They are missing some things. They're not perfect, but they're pretty good. And they're really nice in a lot of situations. Now, for PvE specifically, I like these a lot more. You're going to be attacking a lot more in PvE. I think these are probably... I'll give them a 9/10 in a PvE situation. It really depends on what class you're playing. There are classes that do not require success value. And in the cases where you don't require any success value, like soldiers, for example, they don't have any issues landing abilities. In that case, this ability it drops, right? Instead of being a 10 out of 10, it is an 8 out of 10. You'd rather replace that with damage. So it really depends on the class that you're playing. That's why I'm saying this. But I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 / 10 out of 10. It really depends, but I do like this a lot. Having to only proc a single time in order to refresh your cost. Just having 2 of these would be more than enough to refill your cost if you're using good monsters and you're triple procking all the time, stuff like that. So in that case, I really do like that. Now for something like PvP or guild battle, for PvP, these aren't great. They don't penetrate, so we're not going to use them unless you're racing. Now for guild battles, it's kind of interesting. If you're using these procs specifically to gain cost and uni as a racer, they're not super great. The reason why is because you're just looking at an XL proc rate. You really need XXL in order to be very, very efficient. Although they do give cost and uni, you can still reach a good amount of uni and cost reduction now that you can get both on a single piece of gear. So for example, these pieces of gear here, this one, you can get lowers Unison gauge reduction and cost gauge reduction, both by 20%, but when you reach level 7, they're 25%. And then you can stack 2 of these, so you can get 50% off of both. And because you can get so much more cost reduction easily, cost is not nearly as important for racers. I mean, it is still important, but it's not nearly as important as it used to be. And with so many procs giving lots of cost, it's not super necessary in something like guild battles. So I'm just, like, as a racer, it's not a top tier proc for me, but it's definitely something that you could use if you're getting into racing. So, you know, like a solid 8 to 9 out of 10 on the racing scale if you're going that route. Now, if it goes to, let's see, if it's anything else, like just pure damage, again, it kind of depends on the class. I don't really think that it matters that much. I think it basically, if you're a backline and you're just attacking Crystal, this is a solid 8 out of 10. Again, you're missing damage, 8 to 10 out of 10. It kind of depends. Now, the last thing I did want to check, I didn't check if there's a different ability for this one. And there is not, because it's still damage. All right, cool. So that is pretty much everything. Yeah, I'll catch you guys later.